Hey guys, it's the end of another month, so I am here doing my December wrap up. Now, this month I read 3 volumes of manga and 7 novels, which is a lot less than I normally read, mostly because December kicked my butt. I was not expecting to be nearly as busy as I was, and I just didn't prioritize reading. But I did read some, so let's go ahead and talk about it. The first book that I read was The Hidden Power of Effing Up by the Try Guys. I mostly read it because I like the Try Guys. And this was essentially a book where each of the Try Guys tried something new out of their comfort zone and wrote about it, right? And the whole thing is always encouraging people to try because you never know how you're going to succeed, and you don't know what good information you're going to end up getting. It was mostly fine. It was enjoyable, but nothing super amazing. I really did like the last chapter where one of the guys tried to become closer to his family, and that one was like a gut punch to me personally. But overall, I thought it was fine. Nothing necessary. If you like the Try Guys, go ahead and check it out. But it's a self-help book of sorts, so I'm never super crazy about super self-help books. So it was a good read, just nothing I need to reread or even necessarily recommend to anybody. After that, I did go ahead and pick up volumes 10 and 11 of Claymore by Norihiro Yagi, and then later in the month I did pick up volume 12. This is a series that is about monster hunters called Claymores who have taken on a little bit of the essence of the monsters to get more strength and speed to be able to fight the monsters and defeat them. And this is a series that I have been so on the fence about because it's not been kind of what I wanted. I was reading volumes 10 and 11 and I thought, okay, if they don't get better, then I'm just going to cut it off. And then in volume 11, we were building up and doing this huge battle, and then volume 11 ended and we didn't get to see the end of the battle. So I had to read volume 12, which is why I picked it up later in the month. And then in volume 12, I saw how some of these Claymores survived, hated that plot point with a fiery passion, thought it was like just the worst, and said, okay, I'm done with this series. The problem really came about because this series was written so that with the intent that you would be interested in the storyline. And the problem was I wasn't as interested in the storyline as I was interested in the character of Claire. Claire is the worst Claymore, like literally ranked last. And I was so intrigued by her, and we just didn't get information about her. And they really wanted me to be interested in the storyline that I did not care about. And that was the major problem. So I read 12 volumes. It's not for me. I'm done with it now. After that, I did go ahead and pick up Shadow Scale by Rachel Hartman, the second book in the Seraphina series. This is the series which follows the main character of Seraphina, who is half dragon and half human. In this first book, they are ramping up, and there's tension between the dragons and humans. The peace treaty is kind of being threatened. In the second book, it's very clear that they're going to war. Seraphina is charged with bringing together all the half dragons in the hope that they can do a thing that will potentially help the humans against the dragons, and so that's what she did. This is a book that I really I didn't enjoy it. And this is one I need both hands to talk. So first of all, the first 250 pages were super slow. After that, it got better. And I don't know if it's because it actually sped up, if it was because I skimmed and skipped more, or if I had just adjusted my expectations at that point. Probably a combination of all three. But the pace was just molasses. I really, really struggled. But the biggest problem I had was with the plot. So the whole structure of this duology is following Seraphina as a hero, right? Where she grows, she comes into this as a naive person. She grows, she learns, she has all kinds of, not just like magic lessons, but life lessons and all this kind of stuff along the way. She makes mistakes, she learns from them, she tries to fix it. all this kind of stuff. And so I was expecting the climax for her to have her hero moment where, yes, she's messed up, but she's going to bring all her lessons together into one gigantic good act that comes at a very much needed time that helps save everybody. That's kind of how the hero's thing works, right? And that is not what we got. Instead, what we got was this guy who had refused to help, who came into the battle while she was stuck and waved his hands and everything was fixed. And then walked off with our antagonist. And so they didn't even have to deal with the antagonist at that point. It was just like, what? Wait. And then like Seraphina was just like, I guess you don't need me. Like, and I was just, I was so surprised by this ending that I didn't realize quite how much I hated it. Because essentially, when you don't have that hero moment, Seraphina didn't get her hero moment. And when you don't have that, what ends up happening is essentially she just kept messing up and then she got stuck. And then somebody else came in and fixed her problems. And I was just like, that's not what I signed up for, and that's not what I wanted from this, and I am really unhappy with what I got. So with that, the only positive I will say, excuse me, has to do with the romance. Now, in the beginning, the romance was a super whiny kind of thing. The last 50 pages, it took a turn into something that you don't normally see from romances. And it's never explicitly stated, but it is hinted at what happened. And I love that part of it. I wish it were like explicitly stated, but I'm okay. That was the only positive that I really had, like straight up positive. This is honestly a 3-star book, if even that. There were some good parts, but this whole storyline thing where Seraphina doesn't even get her hero moment, I'm actually kind of appalled that that's how it went. So I did not appreciate that. After that, I did read Ashen Ramble by Sarah Prineas, which is actually the first book in a series. It's often stated that this is a dark Cinderella retelling, and I don't think that does this story justice. It is very dark. The great fairy godmother is not a good person. And it is a heavy emphasis on the Cinderella retelling. However, that's not all it is. And I think by calling it a Cinderella retelling, it actually ignores a good chunk of the book. And I don't really like that. The premise of it is really interesting. I cannot explain it without getting into spoilery territory. But I've seen it before and I liked it better in where I've read it. So the premise was amazing. The execution in this particular volume was not great. The writing itself was meandering, predictable. There was some insta-love. There was a love triangle. I didn't think that either of the love parts detracted from it, but it was not great. Pin is fine as a character. I loved Shu, but I mean, it was fine. I was not disappointed by this book, though, because my expectations were incredibly low, realistically. So I couldn't really get disappointed because I really wasn't expecting anything from it. So that's good, I guess. I'm not going to read the second book in the series. It's more of a companion novel that is set 50 years in the future, and I don't really need it. After Ashen Ramble, I did go ahead and read Long Live the Queen by Kate Locke, which is the third book in the Immortal Empire trilogy, which starts with God Save the Queen. In this particular trilogy, the premise is just that there are vampires and werewolves, and Queen Victoria is still reigning because she is a vampire, and our main character of Sandra is half vampire. In this individual volume, there was this girl running around who was killing everybody like a monster, just like super strength monster kind of thing, and Xandra has been charged with taking her down. In this volume, it was, I mean, the first half was like a little bit annoying, a little bit slow, but our main character was less whiny than she was in the second book, so that's a positive. There was a lot of gigantic plot holes that I was hoping would be fixed in this third book, and they just weren't. And unfortunately, there were a couple more added. And then there was this other thing that I really didn't like, which was like there was some forced closeness of relationships. Essentially, like Xandra was kind of forced. The author forced the situation where Xandra reacted in a particular way, which didn't always make 100% sense, but it set up these relationships to set up the kind of tension in the plot. I know that's kind of I wish I could give you more, but I really don't. It'll spoil a couple of the books. But all in all, I didn't really think it was very good. I do think that the ending ended up being better than the setup would have led me to believe. It was a satisfying conclusion. It was not amazing. It was never going to be amazing, but it was satisfying. However, I'm never going to reread. I can't say that I'm ever going to reread this trilogy because it just wasn't worth it. It honestly, it's another series where like my expectations of what it was going to be didn't match the reality. I was kind of hoping for something a little bit different, and this was just pretty straightforward urban fantasy with a steampunk element to it. But so I am going to go ahead and get rid of that first book, which I do own. And then I did read Storm of Locusts by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is the second book in the Sixth World trilogy series, which starts with Trail of Lightning, where we follow our main character of Maggie Hosky, who is Navajo. She is a monster hunter. She is damaged goods, of course. But essentially in this second book, she has been asked to track down this missing boy, and she also finds out that he should be in the same place where her missing friend is, so she goes and looking for them. This was a solid book. There was nothing amazing, but there was nothing terrible about it. It was just all around solid. The plot was decent. The pacing was pretty good. I actually liked the characters better this time around, which thank goodness, because I didn't love them last time. The character interactions were better. Again, I enjoyed watching them. And the thing that I think I liked the most is that essentially this is a future world that's post-apocalyptic. Climate change has happened. There's been gigantic floodings. There's like the shape of the U.S. has changed, but the Navajo saw it coming, and so they built walls around their land, and they're doing okay. And in the first book, we stayed on Navajo lands, and in this one, we actually went outside the wall and saw a little bit of what was going on outside. Again, this is another thing where I was like kind of hoping for something slightly different than what we got, but it was okay. I still thought it was really interesting to see what was going on. Really just solid, and I will read the next one. It hasn't been published yet, and it doesn't even have a date, but it has been announced, so whenever it does come out, I will go ahead and read it. After that, I read Shortcake Cake by Sue Morishita, I read volume 6 of this manga series, which follows the main character of Ten, who lives in a village that is 2 hours away from her high school, and so she ends up moving into a boarding house in the town that the high school is in. And of course, it is a shoujo beat, so of course at this boarding house there is 2 really hot guys who are really into Ten, and up until like volume 5, she's been really oblivious, and it's been really fun to just kind of watch her be oblivious to these guys as they're like, but I love you. But by the end of volume 5, both boys had confessed their feelings to her, and now in this 6th one, she's thinking that she actually has feelings for one of them, and so she's young, so she's just like, I have feelings, and I must feel all the feelings, and this has never happened before, and like, you know what happens when you have that first real love, and like, I get it, I totally do. It's just not for me. I don't like necessarily reading it. So it wasn't a volume for me, but it did end in a way that is interesting, and I think will set up an interesting dynamic in the next volume. So I will go ahead and continue it whenever it comes into my library. And then the last thing that I read was Marked by Sarah Fine, the first book in the Servants of Fate trilogy. This is a paranormal romance with a heavy emphasis on the paranormal storyline. That storyline is that we're following our main character of Cassia Fine, who is a paramedic by day and a fairy of souls by night. And her dad, who's in charge of all these fairies, Ferry, by the way, not like Faye. Um, Her dad is unexpectedly dies, and she decides to investigate it as a murder. And that's the main, and of course, like, because it's a romance on the side, she is also having very strong feelings for her paramedic partner, Eli, and then it goes from there. Like I said, it's a heavy emphasis on that paranormal romance. I thought it was a solid paranormal storyline. This first book does wrap up some of the main threads, but some do continue on and probably won't be wrapped up until the third book in the trilogy, which is fine. It is set in the future. I did not know that. It's another post-apocalyptic climate change kind of world. It's set about 100 years in the future. I just didn't know that. And like, I didn't realize that until like 30 pages in, which definitely changes things a bit. For the romance, I did think that it was good. I liked the main characters, so I was very happy to see them get together. It was a little bit insta-lovey, but it's a romance, so I accept. And then on the sweet to steamy side of things, it definitely fell into the steamy camp. There was consummation of their relationship, and not a fade to black. It was like straight up, we saw it. But it was not overwhelming. It was more lusty thoughts than actual deeds, which I'm totally fine with. So, but just a heads up. And this, like I said, it is a oh, I guess I should warn you. It is a little bit crass in the beginning, but it does even out and it kind of goes away. So, just a heads up. I will continue with this trilogy. If I like the trilogy as much as I like this book, I'll continue with her other books, which she has written a number of. But that's all I got for you guys. Those are all the books that I read in the month of December. Did any of them interest you? Did anybody else read Shadow Scale and have the same feelings? Because, like, I need people to talk to about this, because maybe there's stuff that I missed. Maybe that's it. But honestly, like, oh, whoops. Anyway, I should probably go since my books aren't even staying up. But let me know down below if what you guys read, if any of these are interesting to you. And until next time, guys, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.